When I first moved into my new home in suburban Atlanta, I knew there would be a lot of renovations to tackle. It was a beautiful old craftsman house, but it needed some serious work to really shine again. That's when I was introduced to Marcus Johnson. He came highly recommended by my neighbor, Mrs. Reynolds, who raved about his craftsmanship, reliability, and honesty. Marcus was hard to miss, a towering man with broad shoulders, strong hands, and an easy, infectious laugh. His deep brown skin seemed to glow under the sun as he worked, and his accent had a smoothness to it that I found strangely comforting. He had immigrated to the U.S. from Jamaica a few years earlier, chasing the dream of starting his own construction company. The first day Marcus showed up, I had no idea what to expect. I opened the door to find him standing there with a toolbox in one hand and a clipboard in the other. "Good morning, ma'am," he said with a polite nod, flashing a warm smile. "Name's Marcus. Here to help bring this beauty back to life." I laughed and welcomed him in, feeling an instant sense of ease around him. Over the next few weeks, Marcus became a fixture around the house. He would show up every morning at 8 a.m. sharp, always ready to work. His work ethic was unlike anything I had seen before, careful, methodical, and passionate. He treated every project, from replacing broken tiles to rebuilding the front porch, like a personal mission. One afternoon, I decided to bring him a glass of lemonade. The Georgia sun was unrelenting that day, and I figured he could use a break. I found him in the backyard, working shirtless as he repaired the old fence. The sight of him, muscles flexing with every movement, glistening with sweat, caught me off guard. I stood there for a moment longer than necessary, lemonade in hand, before shaking myself out of it and walking over. "Thought you could use this," I said, handing him the glass. He took it with a grateful smile, sitting down on the grass to catch his breath. "Thank you kindly, ma'am. You didn't have to." "Call me Emily," I said, laughing. "And after all the work you've been doing, it's the least I can do." Marcus chuckled and took a long sip, his eyes twinkling with amusement. We sat there in companionable silence for a moment, just listening to the distant hum of cicadas and the gentle breeze rustling through the trees. As the weeks wore on, something began to shift between us. It wasn't just that I admired his hard work. I found myself looking forward to seeing him every morning, exchanging little jokes and stories about our lives. He told me about his mother back in Kingston, about the struggles of moving to a new country where everything felt unfamiliar. I shared stories about my childhood summers spent here in Georgia, my love for cooking, and how I had always dreamed of restoring an old house like this one. There was a kindness to Marcus, a deep well of patience and good humor that made it impossible not to trust him. And slowly, without either of us quite realizing it, trust gave way to something else. One rainy afternoon, when the work outside had to be put on hold, Marcus offered to help me with some indoor repairs instead. I agreed, grateful for the company. We ended up in the living room, patching a crack in the wall. At one point, I lost my balance on the step stool and stumbled backward, right into Marcus's waiting arms. For a second, we just stood there, frozen. I looked up into his eyes, feeling my heart race. His arms tightened slightly, just enough to steady me. "Careful now, Emily," he said, his voice low and steady. I laughed nervously, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "Guess I'm not much of a handyman." He chuckled, the sound rich and warm. "That's all right. You've got other talents, I'm sure." The moment passed, but something had changed. There was an electricity between us now, a tension that neither of us could deny. After that, I found myself baking more often, just so I'd have an excuse to invite Marcus inside for a snack. He would always accept graciously, sitting at the kitchen table while I fussed over cookies or pies. We talked about everything and nothing, laughing like old friends. One evening, after a long day of painting, Marcus stayed later than usual. The house smelled like fresh paint and the apple pie cooling on the counter. We sat in the living room, too tired to do anything but talk. The rain pattered softly against the windows, and the warm yellow light from the lamp cast a cozy glow over the room. Marcus leaned back in his chair, looking at me thoughtfully. "You know," he said slowly, "this house, it's starting to feel like a home." I smiled, feeling a lump in my throat. Thanks to you. He shook his head. No, thanks to you. A house is just wood and nails. You're the one who's bringing it to life. We sat there in silence for a moment, the air between us charged with unspoken words. I realized then how much I had come to care about him, not just as the man who was fixing my house, but as someone who had quietly, steadily become a part of my life. It wasn't about appearances, or even about the initial physical attraction I had felt. It was about the way Marcus made me feel seen, heard, and respected. It was about the way he always knew when I needed a joke to lighten the mood or a quiet moment to gather my thoughts. The next day, Marcus finished the final project, rebuilding the porch swing. It had been broken when I bought the house, but he had painstakingly restored it, sanding and staining the wood until it gleamed. When he was done, he called me outside to see it. I stepped onto the porch and gasped. It was beautiful, even better than I had imagined. Go on, he said, grinning. Give it a try. I sat down on the swing, feeling it creak gently under my weight. It swayed back and forth with a satisfying ease. Marcus sat down beside me, just close enough that our shoulders brushed. We swung in silence for a few moments, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood. Kids playing, a dog barking, the distant hum of traffic. Finally, I turned to him. Thank you, Marcus. For everything. He looked at me, his eyes soft. It's been my pleasure, Emily. Really. Before I could second-guess myself, I reached out and took his hand. He squeezed it gently, and for a long moment, we just sat there, swinging together as the sun dipped below the horizon. It wasn't a grand, dramatic moment. It was quiet, simple, and perfect. From that day forward, Marcus and I found more and more reasons to spend time together. We worked side by side to put the finishing touches on the house, but it never really felt like work. It felt like building something together, not just a home, but a life. One evening, we hosted a small barbecue for the neighbors to celebrate the end of the renovations. As I watched Marcus laughing and chatting with everyone, I realized how much he had become a part of my world, and how empty my life would feel without him. Later, when everyone had gone home and we were cleaning up, I turned to him. You know, I said, this place, it wouldn't be the same without you. Marcus smiled, pulling me into a warm hug. Good thing I'm not going anywhere then. And he didn't. Marcus stayed, in the house we rebuilt together, and in the life we slowly, beautifully crafted side by side.